even any documents that require CDD and know your customer. So we are looking at the Bank of Mauritius, but one thing you have to understand is that the government landscape has changed. We are in a new party right now, so the strategy, the principle, even the way of doing things might be different. So I'm not going to talk too much about the EKYC at the moment because we don't know what's going to happen. The chairman of the FSC is also the governor of the Bank of Mauritius. So we are really looking into that sphere. One of the other things that we are looking at my directorate level is basically, fast-tracking, looking at fast-tracking application, really implementing a red carpet approach to existing customers, existing investors, existing management companies, or even existing licensees. So, speed solutions, this is what we are trying to do at the moment and really see how we can implement that. So we're doing our best at the moment, but as you know, we are in a period of transition. We don't have a chief executive yet, so hopefully we'll have that very soon. But we do know that the strategy that we have put forward, which will be published very soon, is quite watertight because we looked at the Mauritius IFC as a whole. And for us to be able to deliver on that front, we had to look our human resources, and we had to look into getting a high-performance organization, as well as digitalizing our processes in order to provide you the services we need to provide you.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is, it's looking better in the future. Of course, we're looking forward to EKYC. Tony, I would just like to have your take on when it comes to regulatory framework in terms of it is always, how do you say, attractive when you talk to investors and say, we are 40 out of 40 FATF environment. We have the VITOS, and we have all the measures to make sure that we don't have money laundering or financing of terrorism in our jurisdiction. Even FSC has a traceability tool, chain analysis, to guarantee the safety of what we do. But what's your take on it, and does the overregulation impediment some of your developments?
First of all, I think regulation is very important for consumer protection, ethical standards, and leveling the playing field, etc. It is true that overregulation can be a problem, but I must say Mauritius, there's already the regulatory sandbox and all these different things, the VITOS Act, etc. It came into the last year. So I think it's quite regulatory friendly for innovation, I must say. But yes, because of that, the startups will need to have more money, because there's lots of this compliance, and it's more difficult in the financial industry to do innovation because of all this compliance, due diligence, etc. And but for me, maybe I want to touch not about the regulation, just the barriers to entry. Once something has they've done a prototype, it's working, and just to be able to get the license, I think that's where I see there are potential issues before we even get the license to operate. And this can be lengthy, expensive, and on that part, I think is going to be an issue. Yeah, thank you.
I just want to carry on with you. Concerning startups, for example, access to finance, how's the ecosystem in Mauritius? How is it evolving, and what else you would want to see?
It's very tricky. I think RIC, they've got a good scheme. I think 1 million, 2 million is a reasonable amount of money. Maybe the competition could be a bit more money than like 50,000 or things like that. And I think for me, it's more about this collaboration of the blended finance, really, where you will have the government putting in money, but then industry, private sector putting more money. Yeah. So it's a bit like of de-risking some of these investments into innovation. It's quite tricky. we don't have a very mature venture capital ecosystem in Mauritius, even though we can go out to VCs in Africa, but even that also compared to VCs in other countries, where people are less, it's more risky to them to invest into ventures in Africa or in Mauritius than a venture in Europe. So it's a bit tricky coming from, that's why you will see some innovation, they will register in Europe and they will, try to raise funds there. Yeah.
And do you have sort of a ratio, the number of startups that end up to become a sustainable business?
It's very, very, I don't have the data, but it's a very, for me, that's what I wanted to research that also, how many ideas actually that they do a prototype, it works, and actually scale. And this is what we require. How does that scaling happen? Like, for example, tomorrow I'm in another panel. When you look at innovation, say, construction industry, even a normal block that is an innovation because you don't use formwork, it's not even used. Yeah. And now how can you have like very, like forward-thinking innovation and how you can actually scale that? And I think this is where the focus should be. It's not just about, getting the innovation from ideation to a product, but then what is the support behind that to get the product to be able to scale?
Okay, so we just talk about financing, so we'll move to the bank person. So, Rajesh, financial institutions do a little bit apprehensive to fintech companies, and we see a lot of them struggling to open bank accounts. So can you take us through the onboarding of a fintech company at APSA, and what challenges do you face? And I would like for you to talk a little bit about your correspondent banks. What role do they play in that decision?
Thanks. Okay. So now, before I go to the depth of the answer, so let us first try to understand the fintech landscapes that exist. Now, there are two. It can be divided into two categories. The first is basically a parent organization funded fintechs. For example, if I take the likes of Google and Alipay, I think these are funded by their parent organizations. I think they have all the access to resources. And for them, I think they have a cutting edge product. And I think they can quickly gain disproportionate market share. I think that is in the first category. Now, when I move to the second category, these are typically those self-funded startups, or it could be funded by an accelerator. Now, these guys have a cutting edge product, but they do not really have access to resources, they do not really have access to funds, and this is where I think organizations like MRIC is playing a very pivotal role in providing this access to these fintechs. Now, when I talk about APSA, right, I think we work with a lot of fintechs. Now, in terms of, I understand that while onboarding fintech, there are some compliance requirements, but now let me go back and try to take an example of Ripple. So Ripple were trying to solve a problem which was, on the cross-border transfers. Now, cross-border transfers typically they require a huge and heavy lot of compliance. But the fundamental truth, what I believe and what we believe at APSA is, if a product has a real market need, right, I think compliance will find a way automatically to get that fruitful. And this is, I think, a lot of other fintechs have small fintechs which exist, I think, in China or in terms of India or in terms of even you go across the globe, it has been proved. At APSA, what we do is, we actually work with fintechs. We actually co-create products together. Now, how it helps is, it also helps us to get that product so that it also becomes a gateway for the fintechs to get greater access to our customers. And second is also they get the technical support and the financial support from the bank so that we can work together to build that cutting edge product together. So I think at APSA, when we work or talk about fintechs, we are committed to providing the real market needs that our customers need. And that is what our focus has been so far.
Yeah. And Coming to correspondent banks, do you have an issue with your correspondents globally?
Uh, Typically, no. We don't. Of course, there are situations to situations when I talk about correspondent banks. Uh, but I think, for example, when I talk about cross-border transfers, right, and that is where the correspondent banks come into play from an international perspective. I think for each country, we have tie-ups with respective correspondent banks. And I think unless and until there are certain situations that demand, I think the working relationship is absolutely fantastic. So we don't see.
Now, onboarding fintech operators, it's all about compliance and risk assessment that you do. Do you think that there is a need for training and educating people about fintech? Because I take, for example, the fully digital marketplace recently. The bank said they can't offer the service, and accordingly, it was, an inability to judge that the tokens or the shares, whatever we call it, would be backed by real assets with substance. So can you just take us, in your opinion, what should be done so that we avoid having similar situations in the future?
I think it's a very tricky question, So now, when I look at onboarding fintechs regarding training and education, I think it's very important. So when I talk about training, right, I think not only externally but also internally in the bank, we all are going through, as I mentioned earlier, a culture transformation program, right? Because onboarding fintechs also require your internal process, procedures, or policies to be changed and adapt to this evolving environment, right? Now, of course, the training and education becomes extremely critical when it comes to, and of course, we have processes and procedures built in, and it needs to be reviewed every 6 months, 1 year, as and when needs. At the same time, I think it also becomes equally important to extend that training to our customers as well. For example, in terms of, I think, I will not go deep into that example of virtual assets because we are still not there yet. But any product, any digital product that we go into the market, I think in order for the customers to adapt or adopt to the product, I think it's very critical that we find out a way to train that product, right? For example, many banks do those code screens kind of a thing where they train the customers, do's and don'ts. But at the same time, I think, it is a thin line that we should also not scare away the clients when using this fintechs, right? So I think it's a very thin line between training and also educating the customers on the terms and conditions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, focusing on resources and seasoned specialists that we need to sometimes upskill or train them into understanding new technologies and new products, but also young minds that we need to push into this new area that's going to be, obviously we can see it's going to be a big chunk in the future evolution of the financial services sector. So Dr. Jagannath, I would like to ask from your point of view, we should focus on building resources to have research capabilities and to really take innovation forward. So what is the role of higher education and research in adaptive and incremental type of innovation?
So if you look at it, there would be two things. There is what we will call the adaptive innovation and as well the incremental innovation, which I think will go in line. So let's say in terms of higher education, we have to look at what we call nowadays. It's no longer that, just a theoretical background, theoretical aspect of learning. We are moving more towards in terms of what we call project-based, real type of examples-based learning. So this is where higher education is also evolving. So let's take, in a way, one example. Let's say in my profession as an accountant, 15 years back, for a small firm companies, for an accountant, it was all bookkeeping, it was all manual, right? And now we have moved in terms of what we call the digital accountants, right? So maybe 50% of what were called paper-based is now digital. Now we have moved more than that. We are now using in accounting firms, for example, robotics. We call that the robotics using AI accountants, and that is already being practiced and used in Singapore, for example. So what it all entails is what an accounting firm used to be with 40 staff, for example, 15 years back. Now these jobs are being done probably by 2 people, right? Only on what we call just on the supervisory, double checking what is being done. So robotics has taken, in a way, the job, right? Not fully, because still we need humans, but many of those jobs using sensors. We now, have even sensor that, previously we had to input those invoices. Now we can use the sensors, robotics, that there are character recognition that can transfer that to our accounting package, and that's done. There are some mistakes, there could be errors, but this is where the role of nearly 38 staff that's gone, and only 2 staff that are double checking that. So what it means in terms of real practice as well is what used to be a yearly accounts, there is real-time accounts that is being done. Now, this is being translated, being transformed, because the customers are transforming their business. For example, a hotel is no longer what it used to be. Nowadays, it's all digital reservation. So when this is changing, the client is changing, is innovating, that will also change in terms of the accounting firms. Now, what roles now in terms of higher education? We no longer need, in terms of curriculum, in terms of what used to be, for example, cost accounting, management accounting. We need new type of skills. Maybe certain skills are disappearing, but new skills are coming. For example, now, for an accountant, we need, in terms of digitalization, we need data analytics, because what data we had to extract, nowadays we have more data than is available. This is one. Second, an accountant needs to learn the language of what we call, for example, of the computers, of the iPad, everything is digitalized. So today, if an accountant doesn't understand the language of the iPad, they don't understand Python, for example, they don't understand coding, so they can't work in this new environment. So this is where, I think in higher education, higher learning are also evolving, and it's more towards going not exam-based, but project-based, trying to find a solution in terms of, I would say, incremental or adaptive, taking the same system, but adopting in a new way, and trying to find new innovative ways, not to being phased out. Yeah.
No, this is very well said. Very good examples as well, and certainly the work is being replaced by AI, robotics, and so on. But of course, we as professionals, we have to always, train ourselves and pick up new skills. Mr. Strutt, at the level of the regulatory body, in terms of having the right competencies, skills, is there anything that the FSC is doing to address the problem of skill gap in the financial sector?
Yes, because of all these innovations coming up, FSC is not Financial Services Commission, as well as the financial services sector is not what it was when it was created back in 1992. At that time, it was all administration, Nowadays, every single year in 2021, we got the VITOS, and then in 2018, we introduced the family offices, cross-border and all of that. So there is a need at the regulatory level for our staff, as well as the sector, to be informed, to be educated, but also to get skilled, to get the right skilled. So at the FSC, we always empower excellence by nurturing talent and doing strategic recruitment. That's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we do is, at the moment, that we are doing is building a subject matter expert. So you will see a lot of the likes of me, directors and assistant directors alike, that will go into forums and speak about subject matter experts, because some of my colleagues are experts in investment funds or even global business and things like that. So there's a need for that. But at the same time, you've got to understand that FSC as a regulator is also an international regulator. So we have access to international standard bodies that we can, look upon in order to get, the required skills. So, for example, we've got ISCO, who are the standard international standard setting bodies for capital markets. We've got OECD. At the level of the FSC, we've got the Regional Center of Excellence, which actually provide trainings that the OECD puts on the agenda on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis even. We've got the CISNA as well. CISNA is the regional bodies for African regulators. So we have all of that. But at the same time, recently we assisted at the Cambridge Subtech event. So there was a Cambridge Subtech week. So we assisted at that. We went to the Singapore Festival for FinTech as well. So we do put capacity building skills at the forefront. That because we cannot give licenses, we cannot do our supervisory duties without at least, knowing what is the business activity that a licensee is requiring us to license. I'm not saying that my staff are going to learn about source code, not at all. We've got RegTech solutions for that. We've got Subtech solutions for that. But what I'm saying is having the basic of what is Subtech, what is RegTech, how do we use technology to enable financial services. So we are at the moment doing that, and I know a lot of you will criticize and say, I sent an application at the FSC, and when it is to do with fintech or peer-to-peer lending, it takes so much time and all of that. But the one thing you have to understand is, as a regulator, most of the FSC staff are very prudential staff, okay? So they'd rather make sure having the right expertise, getting the right, because we also have we've also got a mechanism called exchange of information with our other counterparts, regulator to regulator. So the reason why we take a long time to give certain licenses that just in terms of innovation that has just come into the market is to make sure that, there's no risk for our jurisdiction.
Thank you. Just to build on that, when it comes to also inclusion of fintech and financial services innovation, can you just elaborate a little bit on how you promote the inclusion and also raise the awareness of the general public?
Okay, so the FSC, is constantly promoting financial inclusion, but one of the things you have to understand is that Mauritius is, as per the IMF report, we are 97.something% financially included, as opposed to the rest of Africa, okay? And even in remote areas nowadays, you've got apps, you've got juice, you've got, the mobile bankings and things like that. So we, financial inclusion is not something that, that Mauritius, as a population, we have a problem on. But what we do have a problem in Mauritius is the financial literacy, the financial awareness. So a lot of people do not understand. For example, if I look at 10 years ago, before COVID and all of that, 5 years ago even, people were, the only thing they knew about insurance was motor insurance. Life insurance people were taking for some of the financial savvy, a little financial, but nowadays people have realized that, you've got to have a secure future. Now they understand what is the purpose of having an insurance, whether it's general insurance or whether it's, life and all of that, and even investment, So at the level of the financial services, we created the Financial Services Fund, whereby we have a team. The Financial Services Fund have their own board and all of that, but they have outreach and initiatives to go and educate the Mauritian public on every single financial products that we have. And at my level as well, one of the things we've included as well, like I said, I keep talking about that strategy, and I hope it's going to be something that we are going to implement very soon. It's basically when we are going to relook at a product, when we're going to introduce a product, we are looking at a holistic approach. So the holistic approach would mean, not only collaborating with EDB, the likes of EDB, the private sector to do a product, to do the framework, but we want an end-to-end solution. What I mean by this is basically looking at the promotional side of things, but the promotional side of things also we are looking at the outreach and the financial awareness side of things. So basically informing the Mauritian public as well as doing the promotion abroad. So that's what we are looking at.
Coming to locally in terms of awareness and protecting the local public, I mean, in the past you go into the business area, you will find the license of the FSC on the wall. But now with fintech, how do you raise the awareness so they can protect themselves if they're using the services of one of the service providers?
In terms of fintech, oh, that's a very good question. I haven't come up with a solution to put, a license certificate on a wallpaper. I haven't decided that. I mean, I haven't thought about that really. But one of the things that we do in terms of our website is basically, we use our website a lot to inform customers when we actually provide a license. And especially, you've just given me a very good idea now. So we've got to, Eunice, can you please note this down? We've got to, I'm going to take it personally to put every single fintech, whatever startups or whatever licenses we give, so that customers are really aware of that. That's the first thing. But we did that for enforcement as it is, but that's a very good solution. But you have to understand that in terms of fintech in itself, the actual licenses that we are providing at the moment is to do with virtual assets, crypto, and all of that. It's not really to do with, entrepreneur, that the minister talked about that today. Yeah, it's nothing to do with that. Because in financial services, like I said, we use technology as an enabler. So that would be, it would be the back end of financial services, I suppose. But having said that, I agree with you. We need to make our customers or even the public much more aware who has a fintech license and who doesn't. Yes.
So now we come back a little bit into the innovativeness of products. Satyam, I would like to come to you. And you travel a lot as well. You've seen the evolution in other jurisdictions, competing jurisdictions as well. So take us already in terms of the strides that other jurisdictions have already gone through in the fintech arena. And how much do we need to do to catch up, or are we ahead of most of the jurisdictions?
Yes, thanks for that. I tend to go back a bit to the basics. I think if we want to get things right, we need to have really an overarching strategy for our fintech innovation or financial innovation. What happened over the past many years, I would say over the past decade or 12 years, I mean, there has been different regulators doing their different set of actions which they needed to, because technology was moving fast, is still moving fast, and will move faster. So everybody's doing their best to kind of regulate the situation, which is, I know lots of professionals at FSC doing their job, Bank of Mauritius doing their job, and different forums, and lots of public-private engagements also has happened over the past years. But we need to get something, we need to do something to get certain things right quicker. What I mean to say here, I think it's high time that we have a proper kind of assise just on the financial innovation, where we come with a strategy not just driven from FSC or financial services sector, because here we're talking about a digital economy architecture, where lots of stakeholders are involved. So the design of that strategy is crucial. In certain countries now, they have what we call a FinTech Act, which is the umbrella act under which falls a number of other sub-legislations. And I think it's high time that we don't need to depend just on our own resources in the country. We're just 1 million people, and not all experts in the same field. So we need to bring in resources. FSC has access to them. Bank of Mauritius has access to them. I mean, to bring people if we want to move faster. We are already in a mode where we must admit we are lagging behind in certain things, as much as on the front we can see we are meeting a lot of international requirements, which is good. We have to. We don't have a choice, right? This is our position. But we need to be pragmatic also. How do we start leapfrogging certain countries who are moving quite fast? If you take Nigeria, not even to mention Kenya, what they've done already for 20 years now. I mean, look at South Africa for cross-border transaction, how they are kind of making more sophistication in the law. And there are lots of alliances happening among East African countries with the FTAs, etc., to make cross-border transactions or open banking framework more kind of standardized when doing the regulations. So I think there needs to be a kind of channel open when it comes to really designing the legislation and the act as such. And one thing that we need to start tackling very quickly, and the solution for that is technology, not because of my bias from technology sector, but you've spoken about subtech and regtech. We need to adopt it. I mean, it's there, it exists. We don't need to reinvent the wheel there. It's a matter of taking the bold decisions, because let's face it, there won't be much more resources than what we're getting. We are losing actual resources. The solution would be to attract more. We need to keep attracting more, but technology would be the immediate solution to that. In the room here, I know friends from the fintech sector who's already done, I've seen the platform, the EKYC platform done, tested. They just need to have the right possibilities to get going, right? So there are possibilities. Lots of key players, actors know what they need to do, but I think time has come for us to really have a proper assise on the subject, do the overarching architecture, not just on a perspective of regulation, but also what other sectors will be impacted by it, right? And also what it takes in terms of sensitization, resources, change management, culture. I mean, there's so much to be addressed. So I think we should look at it in a bigger picture, because other countries are doing it, not just at their macro level within their own country, in their own geography, but they're doing across Africa, right? So this would be my suggestion of that.
Can I just say, in terms of one of the initiatives we are looking at the FSC is basically launching, and we spoke to EDB about this, launching an innovation sprint on fintech, on subtech. So basically, and I actually spoke to Dr. Gopal earlier about it as well, it's basically getting a lot of researchers, a lot of those technology savvy kids from abroad and as well as Mauritius doing a competition in order to provide subtech solutions tailored for Mauritius and tailored for the business of financial services. So hopefully we may launch this soon, and we will get hopefully putting Mauritius on the map, not only because that brings publicity, but also getting the sector collaborating with everyone for subtech solutions. But to come back to what you asked me before and what you've just said, we as a regulator, we can put the network. This is our prerogative. This is our job, to create the right ecosystem and the right atmosphere and the right, environment for people to be able to come in and provide their services. And for us to be able to do that, what we do is we draft regulations. We put the necessary rules in place. We will even, create a license for that. But the private sector, the industry also has to follow. And if we've been talking about RegTech, I remember the first time we spoke about RegTech was in 2016, 17. Since then, RegTech has gone leaps and bounds in other countries, but not in Mauritius. And when I say in Mauritius, I'm not talking just about the regulator, I'm talking about companies, financial services companies that hasn't been using RegTech. When I was on, when I was the head of AML-CFT, when we were taking Mauritius out of the blacklist, one of the things that I know would have helped us companies a lot would have been if we had that regulatory solutions, because to go through all the files of those FIs and ensuring that they are meeting the 16 parameters of AML-CFT, that was not easy. So I think we as an industry, we've got to really speak together, we've got to really decide together, but also there is this element of financing. This is why a lot of people are not really using technology, or they are using technology when they need to use it. They are not doing it as a proactive step. And we find this in all our companies, right? Because it's business. But if we're going to talk about innovation, I really think we have to adopt what the world is adopting at the moment. But by doing so, and when I talk about third-party risk management, there are certain companies, we have heard that certain companies are using AI to provide investment advice. We at the FSC, we need to cover that, because what is the liability of the customer getting an advice from an AI? What's the liability? How are you covered? So we have to look at all of that. But all of us need to follow in terms of RegTech and SubTech. And we have to invest in that business.
Satyam, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something on it. This is exactly what I said when we need to start leapfrogging. We are in the mode of, because this element of emerging technologies getting into the fintech arena is there, so we need to get going and we need to bring in people to get it done. And I just wanted to take an example of something which to kind of illustrate when I mentioned about ticking the box in terms of regulations that we need to because of international pressure, etc. And the reality, right? So I'm kind of on a project with a major group at the moment in terms of developing a simple loyalty system that will become a payment platform also for them, right? And they need to go for the Bank of Mauritius. And again, unfortunately, as much as these people, they've got ambition, they want to move, they actually need a team of 1 or 2 lawyers to work with them because the compliance they need to go through at the Bank of Mauritius for that project, despite the sandbox possibility or Innovate, which was created last year. I mean, we're already seeing ourselves in a timeline of 6 to 12 months. Yeah. So innovation can't afford 6 to 12 months, you know, if we want to go quick. So I'm just putting it as an example of everything that we need to do as an ecosystem. Exactly. From regulator to private players. Sandbox can't just remain a sandbox, which remains, you know, what happens with it afterwards. Yeah. You know?
No, I totally agree. I mean, if we take the example of Dubai, they have a ministry on AI, and they're asking questions about, I use the example, if you have an AI data-driven investment advisory service, and if the advisory is wrong, who do you sue? The artificial intelligence, the owner of the company, the government, and these are the questions that they're dwelling on. And that's about leaping over, you know.
AI will give you the answer.
Yeah, but I don't know if you've noticed, when you use AI, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT, it actually gives you a disclaimer. It does put its disclaimer, so.
Very good. So we'll come on the social part. So Tony, I would like to ask you, do you think that financial innovation can encourage inclusive development and also improve social economic development?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's many cases, use cases, or real, you know, like the mobile payment, etc. Today we see in some countries where people don't have identities, like biometric banking, but inclusion is definitely in terms of fintech. Then I think hopefully also with the efficiency that fintech brings, that the costs also of transacting cross-border payments. I mean, I think it's like really, you know, a big problem when people come from wherever these developed countries and we need to pay 20% to send money back home just because of these fees. But meanwhile, you know, if you you have a Wise account, it just takes you like a couple of percent, and not even, you know. So I think, again, the innovation, it's great to have technology, to be able to make it more efficient, accessible, etc. But then we also need to look also the regulatory side of barriers to entry, because, I mean, I know my colleague banker here, I think it's quite appalling that banks make 40% profit, net profit. Because in all industries, when there's like, how do you say it, the cream, that gets taken away by a competitor. It's only in the financial sector, but you can still see year on and year on these banks making so much money, and there's no new entry to be able to take that money off the table. So we need to find innovation there, because I mean that means like real inclusiveness. If we can, you know, get our banking products or interest like 40% less, and they make 10% profit, and the 30% gets into the pocket of the people. I mean, that will change the whole society. And I think that's where I would put, you know, if I have to put my brain into how to do that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think banks in Mauritius has forgotten about millions. Don't need to talk about billions now, right? Okay. So we're coming to the end of this session, but before we end, I think part of what we do, or a major part of what we do, is we want to position ourselves as an entry, or as you know, for operators to use us as an extension to get into the African continent. So moving on to that, I would just like each of you to quickly share with us in terms of, as the Mauritius IFC, or Mauritius, the whole jurisdiction is positioning itself to enable investment into the continent, mitigating risk, enabling capital raising or capital pooling, and how do you see fintech and innovative products financial innovation play a role in enabling that?
I'll start. You know,
You can start.
first of all, what is a hub? You're talking about Mauritius being a financial hub for Africa and Asia. So I think we have to understand what actually is really a hub. It's the ecosystem, right? And Mauritius does have this ecosystem. We do have the players, we do have the banks, we do have the regulations. Now, what we don't have is a synergy of that ecosystem. There's no synergy, you know. For example, when you guys, I'm sorry to say that, I'm going to jump on you, when the EDB goes and do their promotions, etc., I personally believe financial services should be at the forefront. You know, tourism was a big part of our economy, but it's not. But if you look at, personally, when I look at innovation, like I said, for me, fintech is just an enabler for financial services. That's my point of view. Where I'm looking into the future at the moment, I'm looking at, you know, what's happening in other countries, in Dubai or even South Africa, where the environment to keep your financial assets is not correct. Those countries, the people, the high net worth in those countries are looking at other jurisdictions. Should we keep sending them to Singapore? Should we keep sending them to Luxembourg? No. We have a role to play in terms of wealth management. We have a role to play in terms of getting those assets, in terms of managing the assets of these people. Because, you know, when we talk about financial services in Mauritius, everyone thinks it's investment fund. There's a demarcation between investment funds and wealth management. There's a huge demarcation. And we've made that huge mistake when we actually drafted the family office rules to actually take it as an FI. It's not an FI, it's a family office. So we are looking at amending that. There's a lot of things we have to amend in that in order to get those big players. If I get 10 family office, just 10, you know how much money that will bring to our jurisdiction? So we have to be talking, and industry needs to realize that what we have been doing since 1992 in terms of management companies and, you know, the back office work we've been doing and all of that, we need innovating. When we talk about innovation, we have to talk about innovating your own administration, innovating the way you do things, and being able to take on new dimensions in terms of financial services. So there is a lot. If we, in the next 6-7 months, I'm not even talking a year here, if in the 6-7 months, you know, at the moment, everything about private wealth is the bank. And I would answer your question why the bank gets so much money is because a lot of people just put their money in the bank and they don't invest. And they don't invest because they do not understand financial services. They don't understand financial investment. They don't. Like, for example, a traditional middle-class Mauritian would think twice before going and asking an investment manager, can I invest into something, because they think you need millions to invest. We do not have that. A lot of Mauritian companies, investment funds, we only look at international investors. We don't look at Mauritian itself. We've got a big chunk of Mauritians that can invest so that you don't give those people money.
Certainly.
That's the first thing we have to do. But like I said, we have to talk. We've got to be less selfish in our own sector, in our own company. We've got to look at Mauritius as a whole. We've got to look at the economy of our country and where we want to position ourselves.
Yeah,
We've got the right environment.
It looks
at the
like going
moment.
forward we'll have a session just on this
Yeah.
with you.
Thank you.
So Tony, we'll move on to you and then we'll come back here.
I think Mauritius is well positioned because of our branding, etc. And I think the issue is to really look at the attractiveness. About 2 years ago, we were looking at a fund of funds with some partners. And I said, you know, if we're investing in Africa, then, you know, we should be based in Mauritius. And there were a whole list why we shouldn't be in Mauritius. Would be rather be in Delaware or something like that. So the attractiveness, I know Mauritius is working hard on the attractiveness. That we should be looking at. And then I think for also fintech companies is the capacity building and the actual resources that we can have in Mauritius, like coders, software engineers, etc. And this is not really available here. So you can't really attract these big organizations and or startups, or even because there's no one to work for them. That's why they'll probably be in Nigeria, etc. So I think really it's about not allowing that unfortunate brain drain of our own people to have to go elsewhere to find like a job. Really like attracting our people, really, having these resources. I think that's quite key in terms of
certainly, and efficiency that innovation bring along. Rajesh?
I'll zoom in a bit on about fintech hubs. Right now, if you want to understand the approaches of becoming a fintech hub, so now there is a large demographic approach where you have countries like US, India, China, etc. But they have large demographics. So their strategy is to test and learn the products in their own market, iterate on the solutions, and then going global. Of course, Mauritius is not a part of that. Now I'll come to the second approach, which is the low demographics approach. But we do have other successful countries when I talk about Singapore, when I talk about Israel, when I talk about Dubai. And now when I zoom into it, right, these countries, the strategy that they have is not really build a product for their country, right? It's for global scaling.
Exactly.
Now, when I look at it, and if, of course, we also have a very good study of what the global organizations in big countries have happened. So I think, according to me, in order to get to become closer to becoming a fintech hub, I think there are 2-3 approaches and 2-3 things that I would believe on. One is, of course, we need to attract global talent. We need to have a progressive labor and that environment so that we get talents, and not only from a people perspective, but also fintechs, which can be scaled globally. Of course, we need to have a progressive regulatory environment, which I believe it's yes, because I think we have been working very closely with the BOM and FSC, and I can tell you that when I look at the countries in Africa, I think we have a very progressive regulatory environment that we have here. The other thing which I want to talk about is a leapfrogging innovation, which I think Satyam touched upon. Now, for example, we can consider ourselves at least 5 to 6 years behind some of the developed economies, right? Now, they have gone through their journeys. So we know we don't have to go through that journey, right? We can directly leapfrog. Yeah. And there is also a unique position that Mauritius has when compared to Africa. So some parts of Africa, some countries are 4 to 5 years behind and 6 years behind, but we are, again, when I look at the ecosystem that we have, and I think from a regulatory landscape and from a digital innovation and financial inclusion perspective, I think we have a very larger upper hand to become a financial hub. And I think these 2-3 categories, if done well, I think we can be becoming very close to a fintech hub. And last but not the least, which I want to touch upon, is also global standard. Now, when I talk about global standard, I'll just take an example of QR code, right? Now, China introduced QR code years back. Now it has become a source of payment across the globe. So we also need to work upon how do we create these global standards, not only to start with Africa, but across globally. But I think these 3 things done well, I think we have a very good opportunity. Thank you.
Dr. Jiga?
Yeah, so I think much have been said, but I would say, in my opinion, 2 things. We are very close, but I would say in reality, for example, today itself, the last 3 days, I have got a huge delegation from Europe. I work a lot with European Union. They are here. But the reality is, in Africa, Nigeria, for example, Kenya, Rwanda is far away. That's the first thing. So I think in terms of Mauritius, I think for me, it's about, looking for where we want to go. And I think there is also, we have to look in terms of what the country would progress in terms of economic growth, not really, looking in terms of the selfish mind. What I'm saying is, for example, in terms of fintech, I've been in various subcommittees for the last 5 or 6 years. For example, EDB has a team, HRDC has a team, MRIC has a team of fintech, and there is also the Bank of Mauritius, FSC has a fintech team. But unfortunately, for the last 7 years, we have been talking in subcommittee, and there is no synergy. I think this is where we have to look, and have always been advocating. There should be a common, I would say, common team or agency that look after that. What we should also bear in mind is when we are talking about fintech, for me, it's already obsolete. We have gone further than that. For example, the investors are here. They are much more talking when we talk about fintech. It is also about blockchain technology, for example. So I have in many subcommittees in terms of blockchain. We have had so many years of discussion. But then this selfish mind, okay, who keeps the data, right? In the banking, in the Merchant Bankers Association. So finally, it's here. But if you see Nigeria, they're all going there. And what is the benefit of blockchain? How can we do a fintech hub without having blockchain technology? We are still blocked here. So I think, in my opinion, this collaboration, this synergy, a national body, for me, it's very important for us to keep in the same direction and the same goal.
Yeah, very good. We'll end with you, Sajam.
Yeah, I think I'll just bounce on what Babish is saying. This is what I mentioned earlier about the overarching strategy for this theme. And the time is now. I mean, we can't keep having panels, sorry to say so, on that. It's just out getting together, making it happen, because we're all aligned that this is required. And I think Mauritians in general, we are quite a smart nation in terms of leapfrogging, learning quickly, adopting and adapting things that work well and adapting to our context. And we can be definitely a reference in Africa. I would say a reference because there are other countries leading today. Ghana, Rwanda, Nigeria, as you said, already positioning themselves, branding themselves as fintech-friendly countries and doing what needs to be done with decentralized finance, which is not even a topic in Mauritius today, but there it's happening. Yeah. Blockchain is at the core, at the basis of this. So honestly, I think now it's time to get the ecosystem together. The word synergy has been used. This can only happen when we have a holistic approach to the whole subject. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And I think we talk about financial innovation, fintech, and all this to improve efficiency, productivity, to become better, and to be able to put ourselves in the global space. And as an attestation of the efficiency, so we save you 15 minutes. We finished 15 minutes ahead of time. And so please put your hands together to really upload this fantastic set of panels. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much on behalf of the MRIC. We thank the moderator and all the panelists for having engaged in this discussion, and MRIC will follow up with the initial ideas that were proposed and will bounce it back again to the panel members, get their views, and hopefully next time when the MRIC has the next call for proposal would be highlighting areas that have been considered as priorities for funding. Thank you.